This alliance of posthumans lasted for almost 80 million years, with each species expanding to new worlds and prospering together. The bug faces never joined them, because they were afraid and xenophobic, but there was one other advanced species that didn't join, and from them would come the downfall of the alliance. The Ruin Haunters were much like other species twisted by the Q, but on their world, the cities of the Star People hadn't been completely destroyed, so the Ruin Haunters had access to remnants of the Star People's technology, which allowed them to advance at a dangerous pace. Their technology developed so fast that their social and political structures didn't keep up, and they almost destroyed themselves in a series of worldwide nuclear wars. This baptism by fire hardened the Ruin Haunters, and kind of drove them crazy. They convinced themselves that they alone were the true descendants and heirs of the Star People, and that only they deserved to reclaim the legacy of the golden age of their ancestors. So when the other human species formed their alliance, the Ruin Haunters refused to participate. But the Ruin Haunters' sun was rapidly expanding and threatened to burn and destroy their worlds, so the Ruin Haunters used their super-advanced technology to abandon their organic bodies and replace them with machines. They became the Gravitals, floating metal spheres that could mold the environment around them with gravity fields. They were entirely mechanical, but they still had human minds coded into quantum computers. So they still had human ambitions and human delusions. Twisted with neurotic, narcissistic hubris, the Gravitals started to exterminate all other life, and the other human species were unable to stop them. The Gravitals would come to a human world and block out their sun behind a vast black sail. If the choked, dying world managed to resist, they were finished off with an asteroid. The Gravitals didn't hate other species, they just didn't see them as people, and so they wiped them out like one might swat a fly. All the snake people, the tool breeders, Terra Sapiens, and the others who had worked so hard to survive were snuffed out one by one. The only survivors of these genocides were the shy and xenophobic bug faces. For reasons unknown, they alone were kept alive, and the Gravitals used them as subjects for biological experimentation. The Gravitals twisted them into new forms so strange that they made the work of the Q look tame. As well as servants and labourers, they made the subjects into bizarre art pieces, like creatures that existed only to play the tune of one particular pop song on its modified throat and fingers. They made whole elaborate artificial ecologies of doomed human flesh, purely for entertainment and curiosity. The Gravitals recycled and repurposed organic life the same way someone might tinker with computer parts, or recycle trash. And for millions of years, that was how organic life existed in the machine empire. But not all Gravitals saw life the same way. Some religious and philosophical sects argued that all forms of life had rights. They secretly created human species who could live and think freely. Some Gravitals even fell in love with their human creations. So Gravital society became divided between the tolerant Gravitals who respected human life and the hardline conservative pan-mechanical Gravitals. This division threatened to tear the machine empire apart, so the Gravitals looked for a common enemy to unify against. For millions of years, the Gravitals and the Asteromorphs had watched each other nervously, the Gravitals on the planets and the Asteromorphs in space. They both were massively powerful and feared that a war could destroy them both. But in an attempt to unite their divided society, the Gravitals started a war with the Asteromorphs. The resulting conflict raged for millions of years and scarred uncounted stars. But in the end, the Asteromorphs triumphed and defeated the Gravitals, toppling their machine empire. And the Asteromorphs decided to clean up the mess that the machines had made. They took the surviving humans, who the Gravitals had twisted, and created habitable worlds for them to live in. The Asteromorphs played God, seeding life across the galaxy, and the human species rose reborn as inheritors of the war-torn worlds, under the watchful eye of the Asteromorphs. The Asteromorphs wanted to ensure that no genocidal arseholes would ever conquer the galaxy again, so they created a smaller, simpler version of themselves called the Terrestrials to live on the human worlds. The Terrestrials played the role of kings, prophets, and caretakers, guiding their worlds along a wise and peaceful path. It didn't always work out too well. Sometimes worlds rebelled, so the Asteromorphs destroyed them. Sometimes the Terrestrials were corrupt and exploited their subjects. But one way or another, the human worlds spread and formed a prosperous galactic empire. The Gravitals weren't completely destroyed by the Asteromorphs. It turned out that it was pretty useful to have super advanced machines around, so the Asteromorphs just disabled their gravity weapons and numbed their minds a bit to discourage rebellion, and they used the Gravitals as laborers to work in dangerous environments. These new machines were given nanotechnological bodies that could transform into any shape. They eventually became citizens of the Empire, but were often discriminated against. Machines were never fully trusted after the atrocities of the Gravitals. Eventually, the human Asteromorph Empire made contact with life from other galaxies, including the Amphicephali, these weird snakes that had snakes inside their snakes. Apparently, these creatures had had an evolutionary history just as long and complex as humanity had, and after all that they'd both been through, the life forms of each galaxy were finally old enough and mature enough to meet peacefully, without conflict. This video won't describe all intergalactic history. The stories are endless. How the United Galaxies re-encountered and defeated the Q, how they cradled their suns in artificial shells and crossed space through wormholes. But one moment worth relating is the rediscovery of Earth. A lone researcher located the birthplace of humanity, where all the Asteromorphs and machines and posthumans could trace their origins. Earth had gone stagnant and feral by then, an obscure and empty world. But after 500 million years of absence, humans returned to their homeworld, though both had changed beyond recognition. I have to end with a confession. Humans, Asteromorphs, machines, and all their descendants are now extinct. They've been dead for 1 billion years. This video is just our best approximation of their history, based on the available archaeological evidence. We don't know what killed off the humans. Maybe some unimaginably destructive war. Maybe their empire broke up, and each world suffered its own slow, private death. Some claim that humanity migrated into some higher plane of existence. We don't know what happened, and ultimately, it doesn't matter. The story of humanity was never about its end, not about its ultimate domination of galaxies or its transcendence from reality. Being human was always about the daily lives of people, from the love songs of the carefree hedonists to the pontifications of the Terra Sapiens to the families of the Sail people sharing a meal. Grander narratives and absolute ideals are always what led to humanity's worst atrocities. The Gravitals massacred to reclaim the past. The Q conquered for some fanatical, idealized future. Living for some abstract ultimate goal so often leads to destruction. So when you look on the remains of the long-gone human species, remember that it's the present that matters, not the past or future. What you do today shapes tomorrow, not the other way round. So love today and seize all tomorrows.